Kevin from New York. You are live on the air. What's going on?
Hey, it's good to talk to you again. Well, I wanted to get right to what I wanted to talk about, but first, I'd like to say that I am a Christian that believes that the denominations are wrong, and that most of the...
I agree with you there, but go ahead.
I also believe that most of the theological framework is based on an incorrect assumption about, and the assumption that I'm talking about is that saying that the apocryphal books are inferior to the canonical ones.
Ooh, interesting.
This is not a big fan of the apocryphal books.
Yeah,
big fan.
I always get the right guests for the right calls. I don't know what it is, but
what are some of your favorites?
Well, the Book of Enoch specifically. But
yeah.
Do you remember the last time I called in? I was talking about the similarities between 2 Peter and Jude.
Yes, and this is where we had the impasse because again, the Book of Jude does mention the Book of Enoch. You're 100% correct there. It does, and there's no doubt that it uses it as a source material. But the difference that you and I came to was you saw this as evidence of something divine, whereas I saw this as evidence of humans just looking at other sources and writing things based off those sources. And that's where we kind of had that impasse.
I agree.
It's just like the Gospels.
Yeah. Except for John, yeah.
Something that isn't taken into consideration, even amongst believers or not believers, is that yes, there were many prophets, but it says that there is places in the Bible where you can prove where it says the prophets spoke with one voice. Which,
yeah. The Bible says a lot of things.
That, well, yeah, it's insinuating that what they're saying is not from them, but the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. And that's why I bring up 2 Peter and Jude, because even in the last call, I said that there was 72% of similarities between the two separate books. And that can even be proven with one sentence from each one of the books.
Yeah, but who wrote them? Who wrote them?
Well, most people believe that the majority of the books from the New Testament was just written by Paul.
Well, most believers do. Scholars do not.
It's what, like 14 are attributed to him, and only like 6 to 7.
13 are,
okay.
yeah.
But like 6 to 7 are actually seriously thought to be written by Paul.
Yeah, we can have a conversation about the 2 Thessalonians, but no.
Yeah. So definitely there's different authors of the New Testament. And again, like you're making this point, like, yeah, there's similarities, and that's true. I don't doubt that. But why should we conclude that the author of these books were getting all of their works from God, that it was all divine inspiration? Why is the possibility that one of these authors was looking at a different source? Like, why isn't that even a consideration?
Well, like I was just saying, I mean, I can actually tell you each one of the sentences in which can be combined to...
It's not what I'm asking. It's not what I'm asking, Kevin. I'm asking, how can we know that this was divine inspiration versus human intervention? Let's call it that, human intervention. What's the difference? What are the telltale signs? How do we know?
Telltale.
The signs are, well, I know this seems separate from what you're saying, but I am answering your question in which, like I was saying, through the combination of, for example, I can give you just one sentence for each book. It would bring forth a third personality, which was not from the original two authors. in which it can be understood more fully.
Well,
Now,
Okay.
as far as understood more fully, I mean, you're what we're talking about here are pseudepigraphical writings in the New Testament, two of them that you're speaking about right now, right? And beyond that, we are things like we know that the Gospel of John has at least 3 authors, right?
Yeah.
So there's no reason to believe that only one person wrote First and Second Peter, or that it wasn't edited later on. Thanks a bunch, Papias, right? So that's I can tell you that I know where you're coming from, but we have to look at things, and we have to examine the text in the way that it's written, and then also examine it through historical context, right? And in this case, I think that it's important for us to do a little bit of exegesis, right?
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying, because there's no universal consensus amongst denominations which books are worthy of inclusion into the canon.
Which is why I don't know how we can have universal consensus on how the Holy Spirit has influenced any of these works. If we can't even agree within the church, you know, and to Nathaniel made a great point. That third person that you're talking about, that could just be an editor. That could be, you know, the workings of somebody later who worked on that text. We have no way of really knowing that. So the assertion that it's the Holy Spirit, it has to be this, it's the best explanation, I don't buy that.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, 2 Peter 2:11.
Mm-hmm. 2 Peter, which was not written by Peter. Right?
Well, no matter what author you think that it is, if you just take the sentence for what it is, 2 Peter 2:11.
No,
I feel like that's important. I feel like if they're claiming to be Peter and they're writing something and it's not actually Peter, that says something about the larger, you know, context as a whole, right?
Yeah. This is the same as the Gospel of Peter, the Apocalypse of Peter, which, by the way, is the better of the apocalypses. Sorry, John. You know,
well, you guys. I mean, there were many other sayings, even from a historical view, that even Christians have to accept were valid. Because, I mean,
Kevin, I gotta be honest with you. I feel like every time we bring up something, you just bring up something else, and we're not going anywhere with this. And I felt this the same way that we talked last time.
There's a lot of rabbit trails that are being left down. Unfortunately,
Kevin, we are at the end of the show again. But like again, I want to encourage you, like I did the previous caller. You know, bring something new to the table. Really answer the questions that I'm asking. Because the other call, you guys actually both have 2 similarities here. The other caller was about coincidences versus intent, which is a very important question. That is a legitimate question that should be looked into. And this is the same thing. Coincidences versus intent, right? Or like, what's the best explanation? What's the most plausible explanation? Is the Holy Spirit influencing these texts the most plausible explanation? Or is it early Christian writers sharing different texts with each other and getting different ideas and basing it off of each other? Because I've observed the second happening. I've seen works influence each other from different humans. I haven't observed the first thing happening. So